Welcome back to Nails Before Films. As you can see, I have a new set of intro nails because I'll be talking about a new series, the Dune movies. Sadly, I didn't get the infamous popcorn bucket, they were all sold out, but I do have the original novel with me, which I'm still trying to finish. I watched Dune 2 a few weeks ago and decided to review part 1 first and then part 2. I had actually never heard of Dune before the movie, and because I knew nothing about it, I didn't watch part 1 when it came out. I watched it a year later, 2022, on a plane and was shocked by how beautiful the film was. I regretted not seeing it in the theater, so I watched part 2 in IMAX. But that's for my next video. Anyway, before I get into my review, there's a surprise at the end. Stay tuned for that or skip to the timestamp, but shame on you. I really liked Dune Part 1. Not only was it beautifully shot, but the story was interesting too. That's why I bought the novel, and I intend to finish it before the next movie comes out. This video will mostly be me talking about what I like about the movie from the perspective of someone who knew nothing about Dune. First, I like the movie's approach to world building. It doesn't do exposition dumps or over-explain the world to you. It trusts the audience is smart enough to piece the information together through dialogues, story progression, and the visuals. It doesn't explain to you the political climate of Dune. You figure out on your own that this is a science fiction world where interstellar travel is possible. However, the regime is old-fashioned. It's not a democracy. There's an emperor and great houses whose leaders are dukes and barons. And while it does explain some things to us, it's usually done in an organic way and gives away just enough information. For example, when the baron was explaining to his nephew why the emperor gave Arrakis to House Atreides, I wasn't completely sure what he meant at the moment, but as the story went on, their motive and intention became clear. The movie doesn't explain everything right away, and the audience really need to pay attention to get what's happening. Another thing Dune does really well is that it doesn't just tell you things, they also show it to you. For example, early in the movie, they mentioned the great houses look up to House Atreides, and that was why the emperor was jealous. At that point, I was a bit confused because I knew nothing about Dune. I had no idea why people looked up to House Atreides, maybe even threatening the emperor's position. While the movie would still make sense if they just left it like that, we got a glimpse of why little Atreides was the better leader. When the sandworms attacked their harvest machine, he didn't care about the spies and focused on saving his people. So that scene had multiple purposes. First, we learned more about Arrakis and how terrifying the sandworms were. Second, we got to see what kind of a leader little Atreides was. Lastly, we saw that the Harkonnens were a despicable house who sabotaged their opponents. Instead of just telling us that people look up to House Atreides, the movie shows us why, and it's one of the reasons why even audiences like me who know nothing about the books can still be immersed into the world of Dune. I don't know if the scene is in the book. If it is, then I'm happy they kept it in the movie and used it in a meaningful way. However, I would say some things are still unclear in the first movie. For example, why can Paul sort of see into the future? Is it a supernatural ability? Was he born with it? Or is it something that can be trained to do? Also, I don't really get what the Bene Gesserit wants to do. I know they're like a religious political group that manipulates events from the shadow. Their goal is to produce a messiah, but I don't understand why. What do they want the messiah to accomplish? What's the end game? Lastly, I want to know more about the homeworlds of Atreides and Harkonnens and what makes Arrakis a vastly different environment. There are still a few motives, character relationships, or details about the world that are not thoroughly explained in the movie. However, I'm more forgiving because this is only part 1. They could clear it up in the next. Also, it's difficult to adapt a novel into a movie. I get that they have to cut a lot of stuff out. As long as the story is coherent and they didn't change things for the worse, I wouldn't hold it against them. Then again, I haven't finished the book yet. I might find some of the changes unacceptable if I've actually read the book. Next, I'm not a big fan of where the movie ends. It's quite underwhelming and the least memorable part, in my opinion. I actually remembered most of the movie before rewatching it for part 2, which is quite an achievement in this day and age. There are so many movies that I just forget after an hour or so. However, I remember most of the plot points of Dune except the ending fight between Paul and the Fremen, which shows just how insignificant it is compared to the other events in the movie. I would prefer they cut it off when Paul and Jessica encounter the Furmans and save the fight for the next movie. I also don't like the dream or vision sequences that much. I find them to be repetitive and doesn't really do anything other than showing us that Paul can somehow see the future and foreshadow events. The movie seems slow when the dream sequences happen, but at least they didn't overuse it to the point that I was annoyed. Overall, the pacing is fine, a bit on the slower side perhaps, especially in the beginning, but because the visual is amazing, I was never bored. Speaking of the visuals, the movie is really beautiful. It did a great job of visualizing the science fiction world of the known universe. One of the reasons why I bought the book was because the movie piqued my interest in the World of Dune. I know the movie is just a small part of the book, and I really want to learn more about this fascinating world. So while I would like the movie to show us more of the known universe, not just Arrakis, at least it pushed me to read the source material, which is definitely something an adaptation should do. Besides the visuals, most of the actors did a great job, which is expected since most of them are very experienced. I think Timothée Chalamet was a great choice for Paul. From what I've read so far, Paul seems like a charismatic yet somewhat melancholic character, and Timothée Chalamet possesses that sort of aura. I also like Rebecca Ferguson's Jessica. She's a loving mother, wife, but at the same time a mysterious member of the Bene Gesserit. She could be soft, stern, fearful, or strong. Rebecca Ferguson did a great job showing these different traits of Lady Jessica. I like how Dune portrays strong women in a more traditional yet realistic sense. Instead of overpowering men physically and trying to take over their positions, the Bene Gesserit's influence is more indirect, subtle, and requires patience. However, their tactics are very effective, maybe even more than physical force. Overall, Dune is a very well-made film with stunning visuals, an engaging story, and intriguing characters. I can't speak of how faithful it is to the book, but as a movie, it is definitely entertaining and made me want to watch the next one in IMAX. I'll talk about Dune Part 2 in my next video, but first, here's the surprise. The nails, they glow again! I'll take a break from glow-in-the-dark nails after this, but it has been so exciting to see these nails glow. Hope you guys liked my review and nails. I actually used hard gel and pigment powder to create the desert effect. This is my first time using pigment powder and it was super fun. Anyway, as always, like, subscribe, comment, share, do what you want, keep nailing it, and go read the original novel, people.